Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is now my great pleasure to officially kick off the program with the opening remarks. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, His Excellency Martin Chukov, to deliver the first opening remarks of the program.
Your Excellency, the Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of the Republic of Turkey, Your Excellency, Madam President of the IPU, Honorable Speakers and Deputy Speakers of Parliament present here, and I wish to recognize the presence of the UN Resident Coordinator in Turkey. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an immense pleasure and privilege to address you at this opening of the 152nd Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union here in the magnificent and historic city of Istanbul. As the Director of Ceremonies was introducing Istanbul, she said, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And I leaned over to the speaker and I said, the most beautiful city in the world. Indeed, this is the fourth time in the IPU's 137-year history that parliamentarians from across the world have convened in this historic city. The first was way back in 1934 and the second in 1951. On the third occasion, in 1996, I was here too, one of my earliest conferences of the Inter-Parliamentary Union as a staff member of the institution. So, I have a sense of coming full circle for my final assembly as Secretary General here in this city of two continents, the gateway between Europe and Asia. Your Excellency Speaker, I had very much wanted this final assembly of my tenure to take place in the city where I first attended my IPU assembly and where I was elected Secretary General 12 years ago. And I had made up my mind that it would be in that beautiful city of Geneva. But then, when we received the offer from you, Mr. Speaker, I could not resist that offer, and members of the governing bodies of the institution did not resist. They wanted to come here in Turkey. And I am sure they were not mistaken, because I do know that lots of things have been done, many arrangements have been made. Oh, I have to speak closer. I don't want to eat the microphone. Thank you very much. So a lot of efforts have gone into preparing for this assembly, and I want for us to leave here understanding that Turkey was not a bad choice for the institution. Let me therefore express my deepest gratitude to you, Mr. Speaker, and all other authorities in this country for graciously hosting our assembly and making sure that the deliberations are taking place in the most optimum of conditions. We are meeting against the backdrop of a world in considerable turmoil, but I'm immensely heartened that the parliaments of the world have turned out in huge numbers this week, with many delegations led by speakers and deputy speakers of parliament, Having been behind the scenes, I know that we have in this city today 77 speakers of parliament. This is indeed one of the records of attendance by high-level officials of the Inter-Parliamentary Union and parliaments, and congratulations to our gracious hosts. These dignitaries have converged on this city to bring the contribution of parliaments from across the world to the general discussion on nurturing hope, securing peace, and ensuring justice for future generations. And I would like all of you during this week to keep the last part of this theme for future generations at the forefront of your minds in the coming days. Because future generations should be at the heart of everything parliamentarians do. The work of parliaments should focus on making life better not only for citizens of today, but for those yet to be born. Parliamentarians must look into the future and not repeat the mistakes of the past. And that is why during this assembly, we are going to have an intergenerational dialogue between representative of the current generation and a representative of future generations. So we will have senior authority having a discussion here with a 10-year-old girl so that there should be a conversation on what it is we expect from the respective generations. And one of the key lessons that I think we must learn is the importance of seizing the moment. I hope that, despite not always finding consensus in recent years, the Inter-Parliamentary Union can live up to the moment this week and take the opportunity through a strong emergency item resolution for the global parliamentary community to pronounce its views on the various urgent crises we are currently facing. I know that efforts are already being made among the various geopolitical groups to ensure that consensus can be found on an inclusive and forward-looking proposal that the whole membership of the organization can vote in on the 17th of April. I urge you to support that endeavor. Earlier today, our Forum of Women Parliamentarians met, and let me salute the leadership of Cynthia Lopez Castro in steering the deliberations of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians together with the distinguished Fatma Aksa of Turkey. I think they did a fantastic job this morning. And tomorrow, we'll also be having the Forum of Young Parliamentarians meeting in the city of Istanbul. I am proud that these two bodies continue to spearhead the IPU's efforts to ensure that parliaments are inclusive and reflect the diversity of society. As I have said many times, parliaments must be a mirror of society. It must be a mirror in which all segments of society can recognize themselves. Later in the week, the Assembly is expected to adopt two forward-looking resolutions on building a just and lasting peace based on robust post-conflict management and on building a fair and sustainable global economy by combating protectionism, reducing tariffs, and preventing tax avoidance. These resolutions are timely as they also speak to this Assembly's overarching themes of peace and justice. And of course, all other specialized bodies of the Inter-Parliamentary Union will be meeting during this Assembly, along with a whole host of workshops, panel discussions, and other special events. I would like to highlight in particular the special session on advancing the two-state solution for Israel and Palestine on the 17th of April. And I do know, Your Excellency Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, that you are convening a discussion also on Palestine. I believe that these two events will lead to a reaffirmation of the IPU's belief in the two-state solution as the ideal solution for the crisis in the Middle East. Another highlight of the coming days will be our celebration of the 50th anniversary of the IPU's Committee on the Human Rights of Parliamentarians. There is a slate of activities that have been lined up. There is a campaign that will be launched here in Istanbul, and you will allow me not to go into the details of that because I don't want to spoil the suspense. We also will be organizing the usual accountability segment of this assembly. As you know, your strategy lays emphasis on accountability of the members towards the organization, accountability of the members for implementation of the outcomes of the organization's deliberations, and we lay a lot of emphasis on that segment when you, as the membership, you, as the owners of this organization, can report on how you are implementing those policies and resolutions that you adopt at the IPU Assembly. I will encourage you to have a good discussion during that session, as we are also set to adopt a new strategy for the Inter-Parliamentary Union, a strategy that will kick in on the 1st of January to succeed the current strategy. We have had a preview of that strategy, and the members of the executive committee present here have had also a sneak preview of the strategy, and I can assure you that it has a lot of good things in there for the global parliamentary community. I will use this rostrum to encourage all of you to lend your support to that strategy, because it is yours, it is the result of your own deliberations. It reflects the priorities that you have identified for the organization, and your support and endorsement will lend legitimacy to the strategy. So let me conclude, Your Excellency Speaker, Excellency President Tulia Axon, distinguished speakers of Parliament present here. We hold out a lot of hope for this week here in Istanbul. I do know that Istanbul will live up to the billing because I have been told this is going to happen. I know it will live up to the billing because we have massive record attendance in this meeting. So I conclude, Your Excellency, by thanking you and asking you kindly to convey to all those people who have worked tirelessly behind the scene. I see Mrs. Asuman Erdogan nodding there. I see many other MPs from the Turkish National Assembly, the younger generation, Fatma Onku, all have put their heads together to ensure that we have a good time here and come up with something that we can be very proud of. So I look forward to fruitful deliberations during this week. I hope that the outcomes will reflect that. I will also have the opportunity, hopefully, to shake a few hands. If I can do that for real, I do have my SOSI out there. You can go shake hands with them as I come around to say goodbye and thank you for the support that you have extended to the Secretary General over the past 12 years. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the deliberations. Thank you.
What an excellent remarks we have just heard from Martin Chungong, the Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. Thank you so much for sharing your insightful remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please join me in welcoming to stage the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Turkey, His Excellency Babatunde Ahonsi, to deliver his remarks.
Honorable Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, Honorable President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, dear Secretary General of the IPU, distinguished parliamentarians, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to address you at this 152nd Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, co-hosted by the Grand National Assembly of Turkey and the IPU. Allow me to extend my sincere appreciation to the Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey for the warm hospitality and to the leadership of the Inter-Parliamentary Union for convening this global platform for parliamentary dialogue. This assembly comes at a defining moment under the theme Nurturing Hope, Securing Peace, and Ensuring Justice for Future Generations. Parliamentarians from across the world gather to address some of the most pressing and interconnected challenges of our time, from peace building and governance to sustainable development and economic transformation. Excellencies, parliaments are the cornerstone of democratic governance. They are not only institutions of representation, but they are also engines of accountability, guardians of the rule of law, and architects of national vision. In today's rapidly evolving global landscape, the role of parliaments has become even more critical in three key areas. First, from the point of view of the United Nations, advancing sustainable development. Achieving sustainable development, excellencies, and the goals that we agreed to in September of 2015 not only require strong executive action, but also robust legislative frameworks, effective oversight, and inclusive representation. In that regard, your deliberations during this assembly, including on building a fair and sustainable global economy, highlight the central role of parliaments in shaping economic systems that are inclusive, resilient, and responsive to global challenges. Second, shaping forward-looking public policy and strategic planning. Through informed debate, evidence-based legislation, and long-term visioning, parliaments help ensure that national development pathways are resilient and future-oriented. This is particularly relevant as you engage on emerging issues such as technology governance, climate-related risks, and evolving global economic dynamics, areas that actually demand anticipatory and adaptive policy making now more than ever before. And in doing so, parliaments must ensure that no one is left behind. Third, strengthening trust and social cohesion. At a time when societies face polarization and uncertainty, parliaments serve as platforms for dialogue, consensus building, and the peaceful resolution of differences. Your discussions, therefore, on peace and security, including post-conflict recovery and pathways to lasting peace, are a powerful reminder of the role parliaments play in sustaining stability and reconciliation. Distinguished delegates, the Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly is unique in bringing together not only national legislatures, but also specialized forums, including women and young parliamentarians, and various committees addressing peace, sustainable development, and human rights. The active engagement of the Forum of Women Parliamentarians and the Forum of Young Parliamentarians throughout this assembly further underscores the importance of inclusive representation in shaping policies that truly, as the Secretary General mentioned, reflect the needs and aspirations of all segments of society. This diversity reflects the broadly participatory and comprehensive nature of parliamentary engagement required to address today's global challenges. Dear delegates, the United Nations system attaches great importance to its partnership with parliaments across the world. This would also be reflected throughout the discussions during this assembly on strengthening engagement between the United Nations and national parliaments, an area that is crucial for ensuring that global commitments are effectively translated into national actions. Strong parliamentary engagement is essential for effective multilateralism, for national ownership of global agendas, and for accountability in implementation. In this regard, Turkey's leadership in hosting this assembly is both timely and significant, bringing together global parliamentary voices at the crossroads of regions, cultures, ideas, and solutions. So, Excellencies, let me wrap up by saying that as we reflect on the critical role of parliaments in shaping a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world, it is fitting that we now turn to a message from the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, who continues to underscore the importance of inclusive governance, the importance of multilateral cooperation, and the central role of parliaments in these efforts. It is therefore, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, my honor to invite you to listen to the video message of the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. Thank you.
Babatunde Ahonsi, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Turkey, thank you so much for these inspiring remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, now I kindly invite you all to watch a video message sent by the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres.
Distinguished parliamentarians, Secretary General Martin Chungong, my congratulations and best wishes as you conclude your mandate later this year. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to convey my warm greetings as you gather in Istanbul for the 152nd Assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. Turkey has long been a meeting point of continents, cultures, and ideas. And bridge building is also at the heart of the mission of the IPU. As a former parliamentarian myself, I know you are connectors. You connect citizens to institutions, national priorities to global responsibilities, and the choices we make today to the lives of future generations. That role has never been more vital. We are living through profound geopolitical tensions, widening inequalities, eroding trust, and immense human suffering. Here, in this region and beyond, conflicts are exacting an unbearable toll on civilians while deepening instability at every level. The moment demands dialogue, de-escalation, and full respect for international law. And it also demands that we confront the global inequality emergency by reforming the international financial architecture, making it more representative, more inclusive, and better aligned with the realities of today's economy. It demands ensuring that technology, including artificial intelligence, is a bridge to opportunity and inclusion, not the driver of new inequalities. And it demands bridges for climate action, connecting ambition with implementation and ensuring solidarity with those on the front lines who have done the least to cause the crisis. On all these issues and more, thank you for your leadership and commitment. Together, let us keep advancing the aims of this Assembly, nurturing hope, strengthening peace, and ensuring justice for present and future generations. Thank you.
We also extend our sincere thanks to the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is my privilege to invite to stage the President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, Her Excellency Julia Ackman, to address the Assembly.
Your Excellency, Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, dear Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, dear speakers, deputy speakers, and other members of Parliament, my speeches often begin by conveying the honor and pride that I feel in presiding over the Inter-Parliamentary Union. That sentiment remains as strong as ever. Yet today, I would like to begin somewhat differently. Dear colleagues, dear friends, our assemblies should never be taken for granted. In the weeks leading to this meeting, the rapidly evolving crisis in the Middle East has cast along the shadow of international affairs and multilateralism. But the Inter-Parliamentary Union, an institution that has endured for over 137 years, through the upheavals of the 20th century and the trials of this one, has once again stood firm. That endurance speaks to the organization's institutional resilience and reflects a deep conviction that the voices of the people cannot and will not fall silent in the face of crisis. The IPU is as strong as its member parliaments. And today, here in Istanbul, we see that strength in full measure. In this regard, dear colleagues, dear friends, I wish to pay tribute to the Grand National Assembly of Turkey and to its speaker, who is amidst us this evening, His Excellency Mr. Numan Kurtulmuş. Mr. Speaker, at a moment when tensions and uncertainty escalated sharply across the world, you stood firm, and the Parliament of Turkey did not retreat. You chose dialogue over doubt. In doing so, Mr. Speaker, you have reminded us that even in the most difficult of times, parliamentary diplomacy must endure. IPU assemblies, thank you. Thank you. IPU assemblies are a vital space where the representatives of the people come together, not when it's most convenient, but precisely when it matters most. And Mr. Speaker, you have made this possible. We thank you. So, to our gracious hosts in the Republic of Turkey, which is led by His Excellency the President, Mr. Erdogan, and to all those whose dedication and resilience in the face of adversity have made this assembly possible, I extend, on behalf of the family of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, our sincere gratitude. Your efforts have not gone unnoticed. Please join me in a round of applause to our host. They have done a good job. Dear colleagues, dear friends, the world is in turmoil, much as you don't have to be reminded about that, but you have to also be told. However, I would like to remind you that what we are witnessing today is not inevitable. It is the consequence of choices. Choices that have favored short-term interests over long-term accountability. Too often, the future has been treated as expendable, yet it is future generations who will carry the burden of today's political decisions. We see the cost of this failure very starkly in the growing resort to violence as a tool of international affairs. We have seen this in Iran, Lebanon, Israel, across the Middle East, in Ukraine, across the Sahel, in Myanmar, Haiti, Sudan, Eastern DRC, and in far too many other places. Once again, violence is being used to settle disputes among people and nations. We fail to listen to a lesson history has taught us, that time and again, peace is not secured through strength. Violence does not resolve conflicts. It perpetuates. Every bomb dropped, every life lost, sets in motion forces that will lead to retaliation, further conflict, and further suffering. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said and warned, and I quote, "Violence is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it." Dear colleagues, dear friends, on this point, the settlement of disputes by peaceful means, as required by the United Nations Charter, is both a legal obligation and a moral imperative. A moral imperative to ensure that future generations can live in peace and dignity, and not condemned to perpetual cycles of conflict. It is no wonder that many young people today, and today I was informed that I'm also young. I don't see myself as such, but I'm happy to be considered young. So it is no wonder that many young people today feel disillusioned about the future. Across the world, we have seen Generation Z, or popularly known as Gen Z, rise in protest. Their voices are driven by anxiety, frustration, and a profound concern for what lies ahead for themselves and the generations to come. Globally, young people report lower levels of well-being, happiness, and belief in democratic institutions than their elders, us. This growing despair originates from a feeling of reduced agency, a sense that they are mere passengers in a world shaped by choices they did not make. And when half of the world's population is under 30, but only 2.6% of parliamentarians fall into that age group, the numbers prove them right. Nowhere in this failure more evident than in the climate crisis, one of the defining challenges of the 21st century. At a moment that calls for foresight and responsibility, much of today's global leadership remains preoccupied with power struggles reminiscent of the 19th century gunboat diplomacy. While attention and resources are diverted towards war, the climate crisis deepens, and we are truly off track. According to the WMO's latest State of the Global Climate Report, the Earth's climate is more out of balance than at any time in observed history. Extreme weather events are intensifying. Droughts and wildfires are spreading. Oceans are warming. Sea levels are rising, and ecosystems are being pushed to the brink. What we are doing, quite simply, is condemning future generations to precarity, to a more fragile and dangerous world. Colleagues and friends, much like bleak picture I have just painted is a result of choices. We too have a choice. Today, we can walk this path and be complicit in the problem, or we can rise to the moment and spearhead solutions. The choice is ours. The good news is that parliaments are central to the system of government and to public life in each of our countries. They are where differences are addressed, but also where ideas emerge and are challenged and turned into practical responses. Parliaments are, at their best, fertile ground for building consensus. Colleagues, I believe that the first step is clear. We must reject short-termism and anchor our decisions in social and intergenerational justice. In plain terms, this means ensuring fairness in how we distribute resources, risks, and opportunities, not only among those who are alive today, but also with the duty to those who will follow later. And this is also an act of political integrity. Politicians who think only in terms of electoral cycles, news headlines, and the immediacy of markets are, in fact, or in effect, mortgaging the future for short-term gain. Colleagues, furthermore, we must address gaps in representation and inclusiveness. The answer to democratic fatigue lies in ensuring that people can see themselves in the institutions that claim to speak on their behalf. When parliaments reflect the true diversity of society, including women, young people, and underrepresented communities, their decisions are better informed. They command greater legitimacy, and they are more likely to endure. Colleagues, as the IPU Secretary General has just noted, human rights are the IPU's priority theme for 2026. The protection of human rights and the rule of law is the bedrock of peaceful and just societies. In practice, this responsibility is carried out in our committees, in plenary debates, and in the scrutiny of every piece of legislation that passes through our chambers. And by exercising oversight with rigor, we make sure that human rights are upheld in practice and not just proclaimed. We also need to be honest about the drivers of instability and division in so many of our societies and across the world. Tangible inequalities continue to grow, with wealth and power increasingly concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. The gap between the haves and the have-nots continues to widen. And with 2030 fast approaching, delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals must become a matter of priority for all of us. People need to see progress in their own lives, in their communities, in the opportunities available to them. People need to see democracy working for them. This is how trust in public institutions is nurtured. Dear friends, dear colleagues, there is no doubt in my mind that our best hope for peace and justice lies in a strong multilateral system, with the United Nations at the center and parliaments playing their part. Through their legislative, oversight, budgetary, and representational roles, parliaments can reinforce and complement traditional diplomacy. Parliamentary diplomacy can help keep dialogue alive. It can build bridges and ease tensions, even when formal channels are under strain. So, we must push back, dear colleagues and friends, against the idea that cooperation and dialogue are powerless, that international humanitarian law can be cast aside, or that zero-sum thinking should define global affairs. That we must reject, that we must push back. The theme of this assembly calls on us to nurture hope, secure peace, and ensure justice for future generations. Let me leave you with 3 simple asks that lie within our reach as parliamentarians and political leaders. First, choose inclusion so that people feel heard, represented, and able to shape their own futures. Second, always choose dialogue, even when it is slow and difficult, because as it is often said, you cannot bomb your way to peace. Third and lastly, choose to lead with foresight, courage, and a clear sense of duty to those who will inherit the world we are currently shaping. Colleagues, I thank you for listening.
Again, quite excellent and timely remarks. We have just heard from Tulia Aksen, the President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. Ladies and gentlemen, now I kindly invite you all to watch a video right before we proceed to the last opening remarks of the program.
It is our responsibility, both ours and that of parliaments, to be the voice of the unheard. Today, the world is filled with tension, crisis, and conflict zones. This is not the first, but it can be the last. There is always hope for peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is now my great honor and a big privilege to invite to stage the Speaker of the Grand National Assembly of the Republic of Turkey, His Excellency Numan Kurtulmuş, to deliver his address.
IPU'nun değerli başkanı Tully Aksın, IPU'nun saygıdeğer genel sekreteri Martin Chung-Kong, çok değerli meclis başkanları, çok değerli ülke heyetleri temsilcileri, uluslararası kuruluşların saygıdeğer temsilcileri, saygıdeğer hanımefendiler, beyefendiler, sizleri burada medeniyetlerin birleştiği, iki denizin birleştiği, geçmişle geleceğin birleştiği, dünyanın, Martin'in tabiriyle dünyanın en güzel şehri İstanbul'da ağırlamaktan duyduğum büyük memnuniyeti ifade etmek isterim. Hoş geldiniz, sefalar getirdiniz. Ev sahipliği yapmaktan dolayı büyük bir memnuniyet duyuyoruz. Bu toplantının hazırlanmasında emeği geçen bütün arkadaşlarıma tek tek sizler adına yürekten teşekkür ediyorum. Aynı şekilde bu toplantının hazırlanmasında büyük katkıları olan IPU'nun yönetimine ve genel sekreterliğine de teşekkürlerimi ifade etmek isterim. Değerli dostlar, bu toplantı IPU'nun yakın tarihinde sanırım en yüksek katılımla gerçekleşen bir toplantıdır. 155'e yakın ülke burada temsil ediliyor. 80 meclis başkanı, 800'e yakın milletvekili ve 2420 kayıtla birlikte fevkalade önemli büyük bir uluslararası toplantıya ev sahipliği yapıyoruz. Ümit ve temennim, bu toplantının ana temasını oluşturan umutları yeşertmek, barışı sağlamlaştırmak ve adaleti sağlamak ana başlıklarında yapacağımız tartışmaların faydalı, verimli ve insanlığın geleceği içinde yol gösterici olmasını temenni ediyorum. Değerli dostlar, zor bir zamandan geçiyoruz. İnsanlık tarihi boyunca hep beraber İnsanlık çok büyük kırılmalardan, çok büyük alt üst oluşlardan, çok büyük türbülanslardan geçmişti. Ama sanırım bu sefer yaşadığımız sadece gelip geçici bir türbülans, sadece birkaç yerde olan krizden ibaret değildir. Hem etkileri itibariyle hem de derinliği itibariyle bütün dünyayı etkisine alan fevkalade zor bir zamandan geçiyoruz. Çinlilerin bir atasözü olduğu söylenir. Tanrı seni ilginç zamanlarda yaşatsın. Sanıyorum insanlığın en ilginç zamanlarından birisinde yaşıyoruz. Özellikle uluslararası siyaset bakımından öğrendiğimiz ve bildiğimiz hemen hiçbir konunun geçerli olmadığı, tamamıyla orman kanunlarının geçerli olmaya başladığı bir döneme doğru girmiş bulunuyoruz. Şunu çok açık söyleyebilirim. Eski dönem geride kaldı. Önümüzde yeni bir dönemin açılmakta olduğunu görüyoruz. Yeni dönemin nasıl olacağına da hep birlikte insanlık olarak karar vereceğiz. Yeni dönem hakkaniyet, adalet, insaf ve vicdani değerler üzerinde mi kurulacak? Yoksa yeni dönem gücü elinde bulunduranların hangi güce sahiplerse o gücü güçsüzlere karşı kullandığı bir şekilde mi cereyan edecek, bir şekilde mi kurulacak? Kararı verecek olan insanoğludur. İşte onun için bu toplantının teması olarak kabul edilen barışı kuvvetlendirmek, umudu yeşertmek ve adaleti tesis etmek sıradan bir takım görüşleri ifade etmiyor. Tam da insanlığın ihtiyacı olan, özellikle gelecek nesiller için ihtiyacı olan 3 önemli konuyu ortaya çıkarmış ve bunun etrafında tartışmalarımızı gerçekleştirmiş olacağız. Ümit ediyorum ki bu tartışmalar dünya barışının sağlanmasına vesile olsun. Barışın sağlanması için güçlü temennilerin ötesinde güçlü tekliflerin de gündeme geldiği bir toplantıya şahitlik edelim. Değerli katılımcılar, değerli parlamenterler, sayın parlamento başkanları. Bugün dünyada çok büyük kırılmaları hep beraber yaşıyoruz. Alt üst ulusları yaşıyoruz. Dünyada çatışmaların, gerilimlerin, ülkelerin egemenlik haklarına karşı açık saldırıların, insan topluluklarına karşı soykırım boyutlarına varan insani suçların kolayca işlenmesinin son derece sıradan hale geldiği bir dönemi yaşıyoruz. Ayrıca göçlerin, iklim krizlerinin ve özellikle yüksek teknoloji ve yapay zekanın yeryüzündeki bütün tehlikeleri kökten değiştirdiği bir döneme de şahitlik ediyoruz. Dolayısıyla bu dönem içerisinde eski dönemde var olan alışkanlıklarla bakarak sorunları çözmemiz pek mümkün görünmüyor. Eskinin tek kutuplu ve iki kutuplu dünya sistemi çökmüş, yerine nasıl bir sistemin geleceği ise henüz meçhuldür. Bunun için hep beraber insanın tamamının hayrına olacak görüşleri paylaşmak ve bu görüşlerimizi ciddi bir şekilde ortaklaştırmak durumundayız. İşte tam da bu perspektiften baktığımızda parlamenter demokrasi insanlığın çözümü için en önemli araçlardan birisidir. Burada hemen hemen dünyanın bütün coğrafi bölgelerinden gelen, çok farklı parlamentolarda görev yapan değerli milletvekili dostlarımız var. Burada fikirlerimizi yakınlaştıracağız. Tartışmamızı açık yüreklilikle yapacağız. Birbirimizi ikna etmek için elimizdeki bütün gücü kullanacağız. Ve insanlık için daha iyi bir geleceği inşa etmek için hep beraber gayret sarf edeceğiz. Değerli milletvekilleri, saygıdeğer meclis başkanları, bugün dünyanın en önemli sorunlarından birisi, kurumlar olarak insanlığın ihtiyacı olan her kurumun var olduğu bir dönemdeyiz. Ama bu kurumların hemen hiçbirisinin bir fonksiyon icra etmediği bir durumdayız. Açıkça ifade etmek gerekirse, örnek olarak insanlığın en müşterek ortak kurumlarından birisi olan Birleşmiş Milletler ne işe yarar? Birleşmiş Milletler şahit olduğumuz bu yakın dönemde dünyanın neresinde hangi çatışmayı sonlandırabilmiş, hangi savaşı sona erdirebilmiştir? Birleşmiş Milletler maalesef gücü elinde bulunduranların istediği şekilde yönettiği, yönlendirdiği bir uluslararası kurum haline gelmiştir. Ve ne yazık ki dünyadaki bu çifte standartlar hep beraber şahit olduğumuz insanlık dramlarıyla hepimizin gözüne sokulmaya devam etmektedir. Örnek olsun diye söylüyorum. 7 Ekim'in hemen arkasından başlayarak Gazze seridinde sürdürülen, bugün de devam eden, soykırım boyutlarına varmış olan İsrail'in saldırganlığı acaba nasıl, hangi uluslararası kurum eliyle durdurulabilir? Bütün dünyada buna karşı insanların reaksiyon göstermesine rağmen bu 3 yıl içerisinde 75 binden fazla insan öldürülmüş, bunların da %70'ini kadınlar ve çocuklar teşkil etmiştir. Acaba kim, hangi kurumu kullanarak İsrail'in bu soykırımına bir dur diyebilecektir? Aynı şekilde Amerikan ve İsrail güçlerinin İran'a saldırısıyla başlayan ve ardından da İran'ın bölgedeki ülkelere yayarak genişlettiği bu savaşı acaba kim, nasıl durduracaktır? Bunun için hangi uluslararası kuruluşun gücü ne şekilde tecelli edecek ve istediğimiz sonucu elde edebilecektir? Şunu söylemek istiyorum. Dünyada kurumlar vardır ama bu kurumlar artık bir fonksiyon icra etmiyor. Bu kurumlar çökmüştür. Evet, dünyada kurallar da vardır. Özellikle Birleşmiş Milletler'in kuruluş felsefesini oluşturan kurallar hepimizin bugün de altına imza atacağımız kurallardır. Ancak o kurallar sadece kağıt üzerinde vardır. Kurumların çökmesiyle birlikte kurallar da çökmüştür. Üçüncü olarak sadece kurallar da değil, uluslararası ilişkilerin tüm terminolojisi de neredeyse yerle bir olmuş, çökmüş, gitmiştir. Kısacası küresel sistem tam bir çürüme hali içerisindedir. Bu sistemin bu çürümüşlüğünden kurtulması için olağanüstü çabalara, olağanüstü gayretlere ihtiyacımız olduğu aşikardır. Bu çerçevede müsaade ederseniz isterse uluslararası sistemin dünyadaki bazı olumsuz gelişmeleri nasıl önleyebildiğine bir örnek vermek istiyorum. Bunlardan birisi 1974 yılında Güney Afrika'nın apartheid rejimi dolayısıyla Birleşmiş Milletler üyeliği askıya alınmıştı. Bugün de aynı apartheid uygulamalarını Filistinlilere karşı İsrail uyguluyor. Sadece insanlara karşı bir soykırım gerçekleştirmiyor. Mart ayında alınan bir kararla, İsrail parlamentosunun kararıyla Batı Şeria'daki Filistinlilere de ölüm cezası getiriliyor. %96'sı askeri kararlar alan mahkemelerin vereceği, askeri mahkemelerin vereceği ölüm kararları acaba nasıl geçerli olacaktır? Bir ülkede Filistinlilere karşı başka hukuk, İsraillilere karşı başka bir hukuk uygulamak apartheid değil de nedir? Dün Güney Afrika'ya uygulanan apartheid rejimi apartheid rejimi uygulamaları dolayısıyla Birleşmiş Milletler üyeliği askıya nasıl alındıysa bugün de İsrail'in Birleşmiş Milletler üyeliği mutlaka askıya alınmalı ve apartheid rejimi önlenmelidir. Yani istenirse eli kanlı bir rejim durdurulabilirmiş. Güney Afrika'yı onun için örnek verdim. İkincisi, hatırlayacaksınız 2000 yılında Avusturya'da seçimleri aşırı sağcı Haider kazanmıştı. Haider'in kazanmasıyla birlikte Avrupa Birliği ayağa kalktı. Böyle bir faşist Avrupa'da başbakan olamaz diye Avrupa'yı ayağa kaldırdılar. Reaksiyon gösterdiler. Ve Haider sonunda dayanamadı. Parti başkanlığından istifa etti ve partisi de hükümetin ortağı olamadı. Demek ki istenirse bir faşist partinin iktidara gelmesi de Avrupalı ve batılı güçler tarafından engellenebilirmiş. Bu iki örneği yaşadığımız dönemin sorunlarına çözüm bulabilmek için söyledim. Önümüzdeki dönem giderek daha da zorlaşacak. Hep beraber insanlığın ortak paydasında buluşmak ve kendimiz için istediğimizi bütün insanlar için istemek durumundayız. Değerli dostlar, aslında bütün evrensel belgelerin iki temel kuralı vardır. Ülkeler egemenlikte eşittir. Öyle mi? İnsanlar da yaratılışta eşittir. Hepimiz Adem'in çocukları, hepimiz aynı soy ağacının mensuplarıyız. Ama maalesef bugün dünyadaki en temel problem bazı insanların yukarıda, bazı insanların aşağıda telakki edilmesidir. Bazı insanlara yaratılıştan gelen o eşitlik haklarının verilmemiş olmasıdır. Yine bazı ülkelerin egemenlikleri çok kuvvetli görülürken bir takım ülkelerin de egemenlikleri hiç söz dahi edilmemektedir. Örnek olarak söylüyorum. Sadece son 3 yılda Orta Doğu'da egemenlik haklarına saldırıda bulunulan bölge ülkelerini saymaya kalkarsak herhalde çok sayıda ülkeyi dile getireceğiz. Lübnan'ın, Filistin'in, Suriye'nin, Yemen'in, Katar'ın, bölge ülkelerinin birçoğunun egemenlik haklarına, Bahreyn'in, Birleşik Arap Emirlikleri'nin haklarına saldırılması aslında kabul edilemeyecek bir durumdur. Her ülke egemenlikle eşit hakka sahiptir. Bunu sağlamak insanlık ailesinin ortak vazifesidir. Eğer uluslararası bir camiadan bahsediyorsak en temel ödevimizin de bu olduğu kanaatindeyim. Onun için hem umutları yeşertecek, hem barışı kuvvetlendirecek, hem de adaleti tesis etmek için mücadele ve gayret edeceğiz. Bu uluslararası toplantının böylesine önemli fikirlere ev sahipliği etmesine ve bu güzel fikirlerin tartışılarak dünyada yeni bir sistemin kurulabilmesine öncülük etmesini temenni ediyorum. Temel vazifemiz tabii ki bir araya geleceğiz. Tabii ki konuşacağız. Fikirlerimizi, görüşlerimizi paylaşacağız. Birbirimizi ikna etmeye çalışacağız. Ama esas meselemizin yeni, adil, hakkaniyetli bir küresel sistem kurmak olduğunu da asla unutmayacağız. Bir taraftan kurumlarımızın kurumsal kapasitesini artırmaya gayret edeceğiz. Daha etkin çalışmalarını temin edeceğiz. Ama yeni ve hakkaniyetli bir dünya sisteminin kurulabilmesi için mücadele edeceğiz. Son olarak şunu söylüyorum. İnsanlığın geleceği yeni bir sistemi inşa etme kararlılığındadır. Yeni, adil, küresel bir siyasal mimariyi ve mutlaka dünyada ekonomik olarak da adaleti sağlayacak adil bir ekonomik mimariyi, ekonomi mimarisini ortaya koymak hepimizin vazifesidir. Bu iş sadece hükümetlerin sorumluluğu değil, halklar adına görev yapan ve halklarının temsilcisi olan parlamentolarındır, yani bizlerindir, yani bu salonda bulunanlarındır. Bu duygularla hepinizi en kalbi selamlarımla selamlıyorum. İstanbul'a, Türkiye'ye hoş geldiniz, sefalar getirdiniz. IPU'nun genel kurulunun hayırlı uğurlu olmasını temenni ediyor. Hepinize aydınlık bir gelecek niyaz ediyorum.
Değerli misafirler, kıymetli hitaplar için Sayın Başkanımıza teşekkür ediyoruz. Efendim sizleri bir süre daha sahnemizde ağırlamaya devam etmek isteriz. Programımıza aile fotoğrafıyla devam edeceğiz. Ladies and gentlemen, now we'll proceed our program with the family picture. It is my pleasure to invite to stage all of our protocol members to join us on the family picture. Distinguished protocol members, I kindly invite you all to join us on the family picture. All our protocol members who have been seated at the first two lines of the venue, please come and join us on the family picture. Rest of our distinguished guests at the venue, I'll kindly ask you to be seated as all cameramen and the cameras have been positioned on the background in order not to disrupt, not to interrupt the photo shooting. Please kindly be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I kindly once again ask you to be seated in order to not interrupt the photo shooting. All the cameras and the cameras have been positioned on the background. Please kindly be seated and do not interrupt the photo shooting.